Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode. Today I'm talking to Lysette Offley, speaker, author and founder of the Genius Principles and Genius Mindset, an academic and professional development company based in Oxford. Using tools such as neurolinguistic programming, cognitive behavioural therapy, and both positive and evolutionary psychology, Lysette guides people towards realising their full potential and living happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. She believes things like limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome hold us back from creating the life and career we want and deserve, and that a change in mindset is all that's required to unlock and take full advantage of one's innate abilities. I think no matter how successful you are, it's sometimes difficult to shut out those niggling voices that tell you you're not quite good enough, or that you could be better, or that somehow it's only a matter of time before you get exposed to being something you're not. In fact, it ironically tends to be genuinely successful people who go through these periods of self-doubt, and in a twisted way, it's this self-doubt that is one of the drivers of their ambition. Of course, this type of thinking is not healthy, nor is it sustainable. So I was interested to sit down with Lysette to understand what she does and how her tools can help shift our mindset towards more positivity and self-affirmation. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hello Lysette, welcome to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you, Warren. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you on the podcast. I'm really interested to have a kind of conversation about some of the areas of your expertise, but so that our listeners can gain an understanding of what those areas of expertise are and what it is what you do. Can you give perhaps a slight few minutes on your background and a little bit about the businesses that you founded?
Yes, of course. I started as a teacher in classrooms. Your standard stand up.
Yeah.
I did that for 20 years. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Absolutely exhausting. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And for the last, I think it's 18 or so years, I've been running my own business. And people call me the genius maker because I help people use their brains to get even better results across the board. So at one end of the spectrum, I help people to pass exams. We're not taught how to learn and we're hardwired to forget. And if you've got a busy job and you're looking after clients or you've got a family and they expect to see something of you once in a while, then obviously you need to have a really robust and efficient system for studying. And people go from failing the same exam or multiple exams several times each to passing every exam with a score of 80% by doing less work. So that's genius material. And the nice thing about that is they discover that it's not the stuff that I teach them that's the genius material, it's them. They are the genius material because they're accessing their inner genius. And at the other end of the scale, also during this time, I've been helping people, I suppose you could call it with your mindset, emotional intelligence, emotional competence. And that's it's about understanding how we've evolved the way that we have, what your brain is doing with you and for you, why it's doing what it's doing in the way that it's doing it, to speak the same language. So you're working as a team instead of fighting each other or giving in to what's going on in your head.
Wow, there's so much we can talk about. And it's interesting just to see that evolution for you as an individual, though, from being a teacher to, I suppose, helping adults overcome some of their kind of frustrations at not passing exams and not being academic and succeeding. I suppose there must be a big contrast, isn't there, towards teaching children and teaching adults?
I don't know. I mean, that's a question I'm asked so many times, and I still don't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
And the other classic question is, what age group did you teach, and which age group did you prefer? And in
Yeah.
all of these cases, small, large, older, younger, they're people.
Yeah.
People come in different shapes and sizes and backgrounds and experiences. And I have a lot of fun working with younger and older and professional people and not professional yet people.
Yeah.
So I haven't got an answer for that, I'm afraid.
Okay. So let's explore some of those subjects let's start off with that one around mindset, really, and the genius principles. And one of the things I know that you're quite passionate about is the talking to individuals about their limiting beliefs. So I suppose the first question is, what do you think are the cause of limiting beliefs and how can they be overcome?
I think the cause of limiting beliefs is evolution.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
evolution has found a way to attempt to keep us out of harm's way. That the limiting beliefs are there to limit us, to stop us stepping out and risking
Yeah.
ourselves, from an evolutionary perspective, our lives.
But do you think different individuals have different limiting beliefs, don't they? And it can become from background, it can become from experience, it can be. I don't know. Is it sometimes innate in our DNA? Do you think? And possibly from that first answer, it is. So, you know, How can people overcome those limiting beliefs?
I think it's always about understanding and insights, learning what it's all about, why it's there, how it works, how your brain, your unconscious or your subconscious, same thing,
Mm,
how that part of your brain is automatically looking out for you, trying to keep you safe, and how it can communicate with you.
yeah.
And the more we understand what's actually going on, the better decisions we can make about it. So instead of being forced into a corner and feeling fearful and not stepping out and acting from our limiting beliefs, we can make better decisions. Oh, and it's also not a question of forcing yourself through. Your brain is screaming at you, don't do it, and you
Yeah.
force yourself to do it anyway. It's not about that. It's about working much more intelligently with the way that the unconscious automatic part of your brain is trying to keep you safe, trying to alert you to danger and trying to keep you safe. From an evolutionary perspective, we physiologically we've barely changed in what 10,000 years.
Mm,
We used to live in caves. Our
yeah.
ancestors lived in caves. It was safe in the cave. That's why they were there. It was not safe on the outside. So we developed the ability to stay safe in the cave, to spot danger. Someone's looking at me strangely. Does that mean I've done something wrong? I've stepped out of line. Make sure that I do something to repair that so I can stay in the cave where it's safe. We may not have to worry about saber-toothed tigers on the outside anymore.
Hopefully
The
not.
equipment, most of us, but the equipment we have to deal with the apparent danger out there is still the same. So someone gives you a sidelong glance and your brain notices it and draws your attention to it, and you feel uncomfortable and you think, oh, now what have I done, or what do I need to put right, or
Yeah.
that's a kind of a defensive thing, or you attack. That's an automatic attack. That's a stress response, because our brain is treating it as though it's a life and death situation, which is why we get these extreme reactions, feelings and
Mm.
behavior. But the more we understand what's going on, why it's happening, the more choice we have, the better decisions we can make.
So in that case, I mean, you're saying some of the limiting beliefs are there. It's evolutionary. It's about keeping us safe as human beings. So how do you bring logic into that then? Because sometimes we've got to overcome that thing. My brain is trying to keep me safe, but I know I'm safe in this environment. I know I can stretch myself and
And
push
yet,
myself. Yeah, and
and
yet I'm
yet,
holding myself back. Yeah,
because uh, it, the word unconscious is a metaphor. It subconscious, unconscious, just depends, how you've been trained, which school of,
yeah,
which language they use. But it's all the same. What we're referring to is the parts of the brain that get on with the jobs automatically. You can override and take control consciously of your breathing, but most of the time we don't, because it happens for us. Blinking, we can blink if we want to, but that normally happens automatically. There are parts of the brain whose job it is just to get stuff done, beat the heart, pump the blood, that sort of thing. And that means that there are things that are going on for us that our lives depend on, which is why it's such a strong force. So, I mean, to take a completely different situation, but one that's a bit more obvious. Somebody says they want to stop smoking. They're determined to stop smoking. This time they're going to stop smoking, and yet somehow they don't.
They pick up the packet of cigarettes and off they go. Yeah.
Well, there's something else going on quite clearly. And you can apply that to most of the stuff that's going on around us, because the unconscious part of the brain is far more powerful and gets the job done. So we can say one thing, New Year's resolutions. We can say one thing and find ourselves doing something else, unless the unconscious mind has an opportunity to make an even better decision than the one that it's already made. So that's not logic, and it's not the conscious part of the brain, and it's not willpower, and it's not forcing yourself to do something. It's the brain automatically doing one thing and making a decision to automatically do a second thing, because it's an even better fit for the problem it's trying to solve.
Okay. And so would you say, well, I think from that answer, maybe it's a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you think it's got also a lot to do with habit creation, or do you think that is that
spot
what
on.
you would teach people to do? Create good
Absolutely right.
habits?
Absolutely right. A habit is just an action, and an action can be a thought process, can't it?
Yes.
So it just happens repeatedly, and it's a quick go-to to fix for a solution. It's the go-to solution. It may not be the best fit, but it's the go-to solution, the best one we've got at the moment. So habits, we tend to think of a habit being something that we have to practice until we can do it, like practicing your scales on the piano. That's something that we repeat and repeat, and we get better at it, and it gets more automatic. But a lot of habits are just born in the moment. We don't realize it until after we found ourselves doing that thing for a long time.
Time and time again, and
we might even be able to look back at when we started or not, because it all happened unconsciously. So you can change a habit in the moment if you know how to do that. But it's about the unconscious mind. It's not about us trying to force something to happen. And you can, but it's hard, and it very often doesn't happen. It's about working with the unconscious mind.
Okay. And I hope you don't mind me asking, but what are some of the limiting beliefs that perhaps you've had or still have, and what work have you done personally to overcome them? To put it in perspective for our listeners, perhaps?
I've got what I find a great story, because it's the one that really makes me think.
Okay.
And that is, years ago, I knew something wasn't possible. And the thing was buying a particular house. And I knew it wasn't possible. And I had friends telling me, but there must be some clever way of creating the opportunity here. And one friend in particular, Tess, wouldn't leave it alone. She's a very creative person. She's a fixer, she's very capable. And she kept talking about it. And I kept saying, Tess, it ain't going to happen. It can't happen. And then one morning at 4:20, this is AM, mind you, not something that I often witness, I woke up with a question. And the question was, what would have to happen in order for me to be able to buy this house? Notice it wasn't, what have I got to force into existence to make this thing happen? It wasn't that. It was just an inquiry. I woke up in an inquiry.
Yeah.
Not, it can't happen. It was just, well, what would have to happen for this to be possible?
So you're asking your subconscious mind at that point, aren't you?
Well, yes, I must have woken up already.
Yeah.
In that inquiry. And all I planned to do was to go and ask some questions. And I asked a lot of questions of a lot of different people. And I did what you would call due diligence. And then I did it again, just to be absolutely sure. And, you probably guess where this is going. I bought the house.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't expecting, even then, I was expecting to find out the answers for good and all and draw a line under it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, I'd already drawn a line under it all the weeks leading up to that moment. But now I was just going to do something sensible, which was to go and find out rather than to assume. But in my world, it wasn't a possibility. But as it turned out, there were some things that would have to be in place. And then, as fortune would have it, it was then possible. And now I have the attitude, even when you know something's not possible, you just don't know. You
Yeah.
just don't know.
So that's that's an amazing, positive, open mindset that you have. But how would you coach or teach somebody that comes to you with a really closed mindset of that and take what, I'm not going to pass those professional exams. I failed twice before. I'm not going to do it. How can you and what techniques do you use to open their mind to the possibilities?
Well, if you take that particular example, people generally who come for help with exams don't come for help with their mindset.
Hmm.
And so what I do is, first of all, and this is one of the very few times where I think it's important, I profile them to find out how they do information
Okay.
beautifully already as perfectly competent professionals. And what that does is it means that 90% of any advice available isn't relevant.
Hmm.
And what we do is we create a really simple 3-part structure. And the point where they say to them, but is that all I have to do? And I say to them, well, is it working? Yeah. Well, why would you do more?
Yeah.
Why would you overcomplicate it? So what happens in that situation usually, Warren, is that because it takes next to no time for them to get to the point where they realize their new strategy is working,
Yeah.
job done. All the limiting beliefs they had before, there's no room for them because the evidence, there's that lovely story, swans are white, swans are white, swans are white. And then suddenly, oh, there's a black swan. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, not all swans are white. Insight. So,
Yeah.
that's what often happens to them. Sometimes we get that far and then something kicks in and there's a moment of doubt. Then when we're doing the study skills, they're practicing their craft and they know it's working, but then something kicks in and they haven't done what I've expected them to do, which I know they can do now. And then I realize there's something in the way. And then we dive into the mindset. And it really doesn't take very much at all. What will have happened is for their unconscious, unconscious mind to have made the decision that they are going to fail again, that they're not going to succeed, that they won't amount to much, that someone's going to find them out. All of those things, all designed to keep them from sticking their neck out and risking taking an exam again.
Yeah.
That decision was made by the unconscious mind at some point. You won't amount to much. You're not cutting it. You better stay small and not risk it. Don't let people find out you're not good enough. You won't be acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And all I do is a really, really straightforward, what would you call it? Just it's just an intervention, for want of a better word, although I don't like that word very much because it sounds pretty gruesome.
It sounds
But,
quite bleak,
but a
doesn't
very
it? Yeah.
short conversation, two-way conversation, to encourage their unconscious mind to notice where that decision was made and where the flaws are in it.
Yeah.
And what better decision, now that we're doing it consciously, second time around, what better decision is possible? And then where's the evidence to back up that new decision? Because what usually happens is these things are decided in a moment. Sometimes we know when it started.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't. It's crept up on us. Oh, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
But no, something happened. The unconscious mind had to make sense of it, made a decision. And usually we default to there's something wrong with us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then what we do is, having made that decision, we then spend the rest of our lives looking for evidence that we made the right decision, that it's true.
Yeah.
The decision's made in a moment, I think.
And how much of it goes back, do you think, to our childhood? Someone's self-doubt, the way in which they're brought up,
Yeah.
the background
Yeah.
to their childhood. How
Most of
much
it.
of that do you
Most of
think
it.
is fact?
Most of it. We are so, we learn so fast and so automatically. If someone tells you the sky is blue, that's it. The sky is
Yeah.
blue. No questions asked. We're operating from our unconscious mind right through until about the age of 12 or so.
Yeah.
So unconsciously, we're sucking up all this life-saving information. Don't play in the road.
Yeah.
No, don't play with that person. They're not nice. They're dangerous. They're going to hurt you. You know, all those things your parents say, don't put your knife in your mouth. That's the end of that. You don't do that because,
Yeah.
well, you just don't. Eat
Yeah.
everything on
You
your
learn.
plate.
Yeah.
You know, if you're of a certain generation, eat everything on your plate.
Yeah.
No questions asked. You find yourself doing it 100 years later. You're still eating everything on your plate, whether you want it or need it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that mostly happens. And your brain doesn't finish developing until you're in your mid-20s. A lot of people don't know that.
Do you think it does stop? I mean, there's probably scientific evidence. Do you think it does ever stop developing?
Jury's out. When I was at school, we were taught that you're born with a full complement of brain cells, and that you keep them or lose them depending on how you use them or abuse them.
Yeah.
What we've been teaching recently is, and many parts of the brain continue to grow and develop, create new brain cells and connect them to other brain cells if you give your brain reason to, you know, if you continue to learn.
Stimulation, I suppose,
Stimulate,
isn't it?
exactly, exactly right. But I was just reading in New Scientist just a few weeks ago that they're not sure about that anymore. But I'm sure, because if you think about it, the hippocampus, which is really important to learning, is huge in taxi drivers, pre-sat-navs. Taxi drivers who had to learn the knowledge have become super learners, and their hippocampus, you know, the structure of a part of the brain which is absolutely essential for learning stuff, is massive compared to the rest of us. So I think definitely, well, how do we learn a new skill unless our brains reorganize themselves to do so?
Yeah. They've got to fit that in or develop it or do something, haven't they? Definitely,
Exactly,
definitely. Yeah. So on your Genius Principles website, you talk about success. And you talk about that success can come at a cost. And in this subject matter, you're talking about especially for women, predominantly in sort of male environments. Perhaps just again for our listeners, it's quite an interesting subject. So perhaps could you elaborate on this and, you know, and perhaps
Yes.
help with some hints and tips?
When we say something comes at a cost, we usually mean something negative by that. And I don't. I mean just something purely transactional. And it's easy to relate to it. If you need a pencil and you're going to buy a pencil, well, then you've got to put some effort in to find the thing that you want to buy, whether it's in a shop or online or whatever. And then you have to pay some money. That's easy to relate to. Or running a half marathon, it'll cost you a bit of practice. And some of those swaps are easy decisions for us. If you want something enough, you're not even counting the cost, you're just getting on and doing it. Dr. John Demartini said, you don't need motivation to do the things you want to do. You're already doing them.
It's what we do in life, isn't it? Yeah, we do the things we want to do and we enjoy doing.
Exactly, we're already doing them. So some things we haven't even noticed the cost. We're just getting on and doing it. But some things appear more expensive. That's a way of looking at it, I guess. Because we're afraid of something, making the wrong mistake, or I don't know what it's going to look like, feel like, whether I'm going to be safe, whether we're all going to be safe. Fear of the unknown, we just hate, don't we, not knowing something, not knowing what's going to happen, how things are going to be for us. And I guess that's why people are afraid of change. We're not big fans of change, really. We like to know how things are, how we work within how things are. But then, you know, the unconscious mind starts alerting us to, well, this might happen and that might happen. And it's all gloom and doom. You know, you're not good enough, they'll find you out. You'll make the wrong decision, there'll be no going back. And so we hang around and we procrastinate for a bit longer. Or, you know, are you going to be up to the job? Will you be able to learn the new skills? Will you learn them fast enough? Will that be acceptable? So then you get anxious about it. So the cost is just a transaction when you stop and look at it.
Mm.
If I like the idea of stepping into that role and it's going to look like this, and here are the benefits, it's going to feel like that, it's going to give me this. There are the perhaps fairly obvious benefits, but also it's going to cost you giving up the job you've already got. Well, that might be an easy decision,
Yeah.
but it
You may
might
not
not.
enjoy that job, you may not like that, but you
That's
could
it, might not.
feel, but you may feel
Exactly.
very safe in that role. Yeah.
Exactly. So, the cost is, if you step over there, well, you've just left over here.
Mm.
That's what it's cost you.
You talked briefly there about change and obviously the change management process and the change management curve, I suppose, would come into that. But why do you think some of us, perhaps business leaders, entrepreneurs, do accept change, and there's people out there, that but perhaps embrace change, and others that clearly are fearful for it, and that's the subconscious mind. But why
Mm.
do you think there's some people out there that are so perhaps they'll accept risk, they'll take risk, they'll accept change?
I think it's possibly. I'd have to think about it for a bit longer, and I'm sure if I was, if I was talking to somebody else, they'd come up with even more ideas. But I think in the first place, it takes courage because you just don't know.
Yeah,
It takes courage, and then the ability to make quick decisions, probably.
yeah,
So when you make a decision, you don't know necessarily if that's definitely going to be the best thing. All you can do is suck it and see.
yeah.
But if you're able to make another quick decision, then you can get back on track quickly. You know, go on, you can say something.
Yeah. So, how does that impact? What are you a believer in gut feeling and following your gut? We've been talking a lot about the brain and the subconscious and the unconscious mind, but there's gut feeling as well, and then gut decisions.
Yes, well,
Where do you
there are.
stand on that?
We know that we have neurons around our gut and our heart and all connected to our brain. So when we have a gut feeling, it's we really
It's
are.
one and the same, perhaps. Yeah.
And we've evolved to have emotions. We've discovered we cannot make decisions without emotions. We have to know how we feel about it. We could do all the logical list making you want, pros,
Yeah.
cons, make a decision, but you can't make a decision unless you have, unless you know how you feel about it.
Hmm.
So we know that we need to have those emotions. As for gut, the expression gut feeling, a lot of people go with their gut. I think it's got to do with that. But you've got to have emotional competence, I believe, because for a lot of people, a lot of the time, their gut feeling is telling them, don't do it. It's not safe.
Mhm.
It might hurt. So when I've helped people who have talked about gut feeling, who when they start talking about stuff, they say, I didn't do that because I felt really bad about it. And I realize that it's them holding themselves back
Yeah.
from doing something they actually want to do because they are creating emotions and thoughts that are keeping them back.
It's all
And
back
it's
to those
not,
limiting beliefs again,
yes,
isn't it?
it might be safer. It might be. It might be. You might have to learn some new stuff if
Yeah.
you step forward. But it certainly isn't satisfying staying where you are because you're afraid to tip you put your toe in the water. So
Definitely.
I gut feeling, I'd say yes, but exercise caution. Be sure that you are in touch with why you are having the thoughts, why you are having the emotions, and be able to make a healthy, sensible decision for yourself and follow through and see what happens. And then make another decision.
Fantastic. And something else that just cropped up in those few minutes of conversation is around that us waiting for the perfect time, us procrastinating. That's an
Mm,
easy one, isn't it? To
mm,
a belief to put in our minds that actually, yeah, I really want to do this. I want to do that, but actually,
mm,
it's not quite the right time. How would
mm.
you coach people, get people to realize that actually, they should overcome that as a fear or as possibly as an excuse?
Yes, yes. You have to really have a look at why that excuse exists. Perhaps there's a blooming good reason not to do XYZ right now or
Yeah,
next week. Maybe it would be an even better solution to wait to the week after. But if you make that decision, you know why you're making it. And lo and behold, when you reach that time, it
yeah,
happens because you've planned for it and you've stepped into it. If it's a less not effective, that's not the right word, competent. If it's a less competent interpretation of thoughts and feelings you're having, then develop a bit of competence and make healthy decisions for yourself and for the people you love.
And not using them, not using those excuses. So one of the things that you said in your introduction is that you're known as the genius maker. I love that.
Mm.
So and again, I suppose that must come back to your program and the principles that you run about, and is about accessing another level of intelligence, I think is your words. What do you really mean by that, and how do people go about accessing another level of intelligence? Because it sounds great. It sounds very grand, but it sounds very great, doesn't it?
Yeah, when somebody called me the genius maker, it kind of stuck. And I like that because there is genius in all of us.
Mm,
We are all totally amazing, all of
mm,
us. And we've done amazing things. Now, I don't mean necessarily built a rocket and gone to the moon, and that's pretty amazing. But
yeah.
I mean picking yourself up again when you've been knocked down. That's amazing. Or helping another human being just because you can. That's amazing. You know, we are totally amazing. And it's all there inside us. You know, we're all capable of that. But what we learn generally as we grow up is what we can't do, what we shouldn't do, what
Mm,
nobody else is doing. Therefore, we shouldn't be doing it either. And a lot of it's unconscious. And so we start to play small. We start to forget what we're capable of.
mm,
And that doesn't mean that everybody has to do things in a particular way and be, you know, extraordinary every minute of the day. I don't mean that at all. I just mean that if somebody wants to do a bit more than they're doing, or do things in a different way, or have a different life, it's all there because it doesn't depend on other people. It depends on you.
yeah.
And that's a bit of an eye opener when you really connect with that, when you really realize that if it's all down to me, what is it then that I need to learn? What do I need to be able to do? What do I need to understand in order to have what I'm telling everybody I want to have happen? And to answer your question about how do you do that, you need to learn the emotional competency skills.
Mm.
And it's what you don't know, you don't know.
Good. It's really, I mean, I know I have to sit here as a parent now, actually, and I'm thinking, as a parent, what do you think we can do to help our children perhaps not have so many? I know it's a slightly left field question here, but maybe as a parent, what we can do not to give our children so many limiting beliefs and give them that ability to go into adulthood being more open minded about what they can do and what they can
So,
achieve.
so why do you think we end up giving our children limiting beliefs as a parent?
Trying to keep them safe from harm.
Of
Yeah,
course.
cool.
And of course you do. But the problem is, life will chuck unexpected and difficult challenges at every single one of
Mm.
us.
It's life's rich tapestry, isn't it?
Exactly. So, in actual fact, while naturally enough parents want to protect their children, probably the best thing, I mean, of course, you're going to stop them playing on the motorway. Of course, you are. But at the same time, surely the approach that has legs is giving them the tools to cope, to make the best of, to find their way through those issues when they do materialize. Instead of protecting them from them, teach them how to deal with them. And you know, as a teacher, I used to groan. You know, whenever you'd hear on the news people saying, "Well, we ought to teach that in schools," and thinking, when? Yeah, there aren't enough
Yeah.
hours in the day. When are we going to teach that? I agree, we should. When are we going to do that? But I really think this is very important because we learn who we are in the world, how the world is, how other people are from what's going on around us as we grow up.
Mm.
Some of us are luckier than others. There's no consistency there.
No.
But pretty much what happens is we end up with limiting beliefs and ways of playing small instead of being free to take the actions that we could if we didn't have those limiting beliefs, which are designed by everyone to keep you safe.
Yeah.
So I would really love it if there was a program in schools to give every child a fighting chance to better understand what's going on with them, with other people in the world, so that they could make a better fist of it.
Fantastic. Well, there's a new cause for you, Lysette. Off you
Well,
go.
it's not a new cause, but it's a question of how many hours there are in the day. But I mean,
Yeah.
I have programs in place for youngsters that are
Okay.
really effective. It's a question of finding a way to to make it more make all of this stuff more accessible to more people.
Yeah. Get more people to understand it. Get more people to,
That's right, because it makes for an easier life.
yeah. And what impact? And I suppose, how do I frame? Do you think what point in your life, you talked about the house purchase, but at what point in your life did your attitude change, or did you always have this more open-minded,
No,
you
was I
think?
born that way?
Yeah.
Actually, probably I was born that way, but like everybody else, I learnt how to play small.
Yeah.
There was I started get no, let me start again. I've always been interested in biology and people and the mind, the brain. And when I left teaching, so one of the really rewarding things, there's so many rewarding things about teaching, but just to have a child mouth across the classroom, "Thank you,"
Hmm.
at the end of the day, because you knew that you'd helped, and they recognize that. I mean, often they would just clear off and not, and that's
That's okay.
fine.
Yeah.
You're not looking for external praise. You just know that you feel good you've done that job, and you still haven't done that job yet. But I've always been interested in all of that kind of stuff. And when I started getting the opportunity to go on my own personal development journey, probably about, I don't know, let's call it 25 or so years ago, I was absolutely fascinated by the fact that each time I engaged with something, it wasn't as though somebody new was coming up with a new idea and it could look like this. And you're thinking,
Hmm.
okay, they're trying really hard. They really want to help, but it's their angle and it's not going to hit the spot for everyone. It wasn't like that at all. It seemed to me that each time I accessed something about emotional intelligence, they were onto something. There was an underlying structure that they were tapping in and out of that was a complete paradigm shift for me. And so I started doing a lot of personal development, and that morphed into professional training. And then, of course, you apply it all to yourself because, hell, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. You're learning things. And it's about self-development, isn't it? That's why you're
Yes,
on that journey.
exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, now that I've been around for a little while, I've noticed that there are a lot of people out there telling their clients what to do, but not doing it themselves.
Hmm.
I wouldn't. I'm using the smoking analogy again. If you wanted to stop smoking, probably better not to go to someone who hasn't managed to quit themselves.
Yeah.
But I've been really, really lucky with the professional training, and I call it world class training because of the people who have been doing it and where I've had to
Hmm.
go to go and learn this stuff. And consequently, I've had a lot of experience with clients and a lot of success, and a lot of surprising things. You never know how far or how fast you can go with a client until you start. But there's always a lot more available than they first thought. Dr. John Grinder, who was one of the two co-founders of NLP, has gone on to create New Code NLP in an attempt to make sure that practitioners walk the talk. So there's a lot to say about that. But in any case, I've found my life getting easier as I've just absorbed and used
Some of these techniques.
these techniques. They're not so much techniques; they're just a way of being, a way of life.
Yeah.
Like the black swan thing. Once you've seen a black swan, you stop insisting that there are only white swans in the world, and so you operate from the knowledge that there are some black swans.
Absolutely.
So you operate in a new way.
And from your own experience and the work that you've done, have you got one particular story that you think, I mean, I'm sure there's many, but that stands out in terms of somebody that's changed their mindset and done some remarkable things as a result?
Well, there are so many, because the whole point about it is to break through to the
Those
new
barriers,
level.
yeah.
There was a a new business owner. She worked in her family business, but now the business was hers, and so there was already a tradition there, and she didn't want to fail. In fact, she wanted to make it more her own and take it to enormous success, but she wouldn't go to networking meetings and she wouldn't pick the phone up.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
now she makes videos and she gives talks. So
Okay.
that has obviously opened up. So before it was like she had one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake.
Yeah.
Well, now she's taken her foot off the brake. So she's free to step into whatever, role she wants to step into. So before she wasn't free to do that, she was caught. But
Yeah.
now she can make those decisions. There was a woman who was actually sent by her boss. Her boss suggested that she should work with me, which she did, because he could see that she had a lot more potential than
Yeah.
she was letting on. And as a result of that, she went straight back to the boss and said, "I don't want this job." And he looked at her rather surprised, because that's not the outcome he was expecting. "I don't want this job. What I want is," and then she started to describe a job that didn't exist. He agreed with her, gave her the job, created the job, gave her the job, and promoted her.
Fantastic. Look at that. That's a great story, isn't it? And I suppose that's having that open mindset and just releasing your potential, isn't it? Um, as we wrap up, I've got two final questions for you. The first is, and again, I'm probably going off at a complete tangent here, but this whole principle of, you're talking about being the open mindset. Where do you sit over mind over matter as a subject? That the fact that we can train and focus our brain to overcome adversity, overcome illness within our bodies, and all of those kind of things. Is that something that you believe in? If you think
I've
it's something that's out there?
Some of my very extraordinary results have been with people who've had difficult medical conditions that doctors haven't been able to help with.
Yeah.
Medical conditions that I've never heard of before: focal dystonia, gastrointestinal reflux disease, Tourette's. We've all heard of
Mhm.
Tourette's, anorexia. A whole raft of things. Some of which we've heard of, and some of which I hadn't heard of. And my model doesn't mean that it has to be true, but my model is an illness is an outward manifestation of what's going on inside,
Mm.
as is behavior, as is, thought patterns and all the rest of it. So I applied the same model and work with the unconscious mind to find an even better solution to the problem that the illness, the behavior, the thought processes were there to fix. When the unconscious mind goes to look for an even better solution and finds it, automatically there's no need for the medical condition or the thought
Mm.
processes, the emotions to be there anymore. They've done their job. They've served their purpose. Now we've got a better solution. And it just happens automatically. And like I say, you don't know how fast a person can go. You don't know how far a person
Mm.
can go. But when I met a young man, was he 19? I think I've forgotten how old he was. He was a teenager. He was 6'7", he probably still is, 6'7", but as skinny. I've never seen anybody as skinny, and it was all I could do to not make an audible gasp. And the long and short of it was that he was born with some problems with his digestive system. He'd had a number of operations, and he'd now been given his last operation and the all clear. Now physically, you're perfect. But still, he couldn't eat. He had two options. One was to force the food down and watch it come back up again. And the
Mm.
other was to just not even to get that far, not even to get it into his system. And his mother was beside herself with concern. And this young chap turns up. Anyway, wind forward a week, and they get back in touch with me to say that they were chatting over dinner and they got engrossed in the conversation. It was only at the end of the dinner that they glanced down at their plates. Mum's plate was empty, as you'd expect, but so
Yeah.
was his. It was a non-issue. He hadn't had to think about it and work at it and make it happen successfully. He didn't even have to do that. He was totally oblivious of what was going on. There was no problem. His unconscious mind had made an even better solution than the one that it had for keeping him safe. The solution it had for keeping him safe was not eating food because it didn't do him any good. That was true for years. It wasn't true anymore. So the unconscious mind learnt something new and operated from a different paradigm.
Fantastic. Well, now, out of
That's
all of your
amazing, isn't it?
success stories, that's amazing. Yeah. That proves that it does exist, and what a powerful thing our brains are. So my final question, we call this the Evolve to Succeed podcast. What is your own personal definition of success?
Oh, goodness me. You had
It's
to
a
ask me.
question and a half to end on, isn't it?
Yeah. Success. Well, it's got to be doing what you want. Something that fills you with joy. Something
Fantastic.
that lights your candle. And it doesn't have to be launching that rocket to the moon. It could be simply teaching someone the alphabet, or or just walking in the park just because you can.
Finding your joy and having time to find that joy and then undertake that joy.
Yeah. I'm not sure that we're here more than once. I think we're probably here just the once, to be able to look back over your life and say, yeah, that would be a great thing.
Brilliant. I've really enjoyed our conversation. It's going to be one of those conversations. It's just after midday now. I think I'm going to be going to sleep tonight thinking about some of the things we've talked about, Lysette. It's definitely got me thinking. It's been a brilliant episode of the podcast. So thank you for being a guest. If people want to learn more about you and what you're up to and those businesses that you operate, where can they go to?
Well, if they need a simple strategy to pass exams and remember the information ongoingly, not just up to the exam, but make them more knowledgeable, then it's Genius Material, my website, Genius Material, but that's genius-material.com. There's a hyphen in the middle of it, genius-material.com. If it's about mindset and about breaking through the glass ceiling to the next level, it's then geniusprinciples.com, no hyphen, geniusprinciples.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Lysette. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed, and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.